I'm Rosemary Maggiore. I'm the Vice President of Sales at AudienceView. I just wanted to say hello. I'm going to start by introducing Amy. So I've known Amy a very long time, and longer than I care to admit. Actually, Amy and I grew up together, just truth be told. But I have watched her career grow in a really, really interesting direction. She's got over 25 years experience in the nonprofit sector. Previously, she was the CEO of a trade association, and now she's the president of Magnify Your Mission, which is an organization that works with nonprofits at every stage of growth and helps orgs focus their time and energy on the right things, which was something I thought was particularly relevant today. So Amy talked about her own burnout as an executive in this field and how she tries to help organizations really look at where they should be spending their time and energy to drive a more efficient operation. We are all lean, so we know that that's important. So I thought big topics today for some of our clients would be about how to reach new audiences, how to bring in younger donors, just shoring up that donor base. But please add your questions to the chat and I'll keep an eye out. Amy's gonna give her presentation, but we will, I'll interrupt her if appropriate. Otherwise, we'll save them for the end, but don't be shy. Post questions in the chat and we'll get to them eventually. So without further ado, Amy, over to you.
Ro, it is so good to be with you today, and look at all these powerful people joining the call. That's what we like, people who own their power. So excellent to be with you. Thank you so much to AudienceView for having me. What I love about partnering with AudienceView is the synergy of our mission. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about myself and my work briefly as we get started, but AudienceView is so committed to community building, right? The whole, the vision of growing arts audiences everywhere and helping you specifically get the word out, get your events discovered, attended, and remembered. That's community. And so I love when our values align in this way. I love talking about community engagement because I know that's the power that makes this world a better place. And nowhere does that happen better than the arts. So it's a real privilege to be here today. Thanks for having me. And I'm so glad people are joining in. Before we get started, I am curious, where are you all from? Folks are already introducing themselves in the audience. We're Texas to Canada, Arizona. How you holding up? Staying cool, I hope. It is hot as hell out there. So I hope everyone's staying safe. So keep sharing where you're coming in from and your organization if you're willing. It really helps us hone in on how we can best be of help today. And that's what we want today. So who here is looking for an easier way to raise more money for their organization, you know, without the 24/7 hustle? Who wants an easier way to raise money? Give me a high five in the comments there. Give me your favorite emoji in the comments if you want an easier way to raise money, if that's something that's been on your mind. And the other thing I hear a lot from folks is people who want to build their membership, right? They want more people in their audience. So give me a second emoji if that's the second half of things you spend a lot of your time thinking about. How do I raise more money? Heck yes. And how do I bring more people into what I like to call the movement, right? Engage them in your mission. Okay, yes, thumbs up. I like all the, and we got some two for ones there. Yeah, because they go hand in hand, right? Fundraising and growing and engaging your community effectively, they go hand in hand. And I'm going to put forth that only together is when things start moving smoothly, right? So we can avoid the burnout, the overwork, the overwhelm. So today, the purpose of today is we're going to give you some tactical steps and some mindset shifting to help you on your path to becoming fearless in your fundraising and in your community leadership. We want you to feel fearless in going out there, talking about your mission, calling in the supporters, not only who are doing nice, generous things, but belong at the table and have a responsibility for the success of your mission, just like you do, right? So the purpose of today is helping you tap into your fearless fundraising. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious if how many know the size of the arts industry. Anyone have that number readily available? The economic size of the arts industry. The arts contribute a tremendous amount of money to our economy and to our country, to the tune of, I'm just looking real quick if anybody happens to know that gigantic dollar amount, $800 billion. More than transportation, more than agriculture. We are not just nice to have. Art for art's sake is not where the story ends, right? It's good for community and connection. It creates safer, more vibrant, more tax dollar generation in communities. And it's a major driver of our national community, making something like 5% of our GDP, our gross domestic product. So know that it's not just filling seats for one performance or a season, or inviting people and growing membership by 5 or 10%. This is about together, all of you together, as a movement of saying arts is the path forward. And we're going to help you with your messaging to really drive that home so you can attract your ideal donors, your dream donors more easily. So $800 billion, that's a big dollar amount. Today, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to invite you to ask questions in the chat. I absolutely love engagement. I'm going to do my best to monitor that as we go. There's no better time than right now to ask your question. We'll weave it in. The very least, we'll follow up at the end.
Amy, I'll keep an eye on the chat too, so I can throw you out some questions. But
I'll count on you for that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I'll just start to kick you off. One of the things I hear from a lot of our clients is that, I heard this several times where donations are up, but donors are down. So, yeah. And some of the organizations I work with personally, we do continue to get donations, major donations from some people maybe we've worked with for a long time. But the concern is that those people are, eventually going to pass on. How do we bring in younger people who maybe aren't used to making such large donations? Like, is there such a thing as micro donations? Do you have a strategy for sort of just hooking people in? I know you mentioned community a lot, but is it about engaging them in who you are as an organization and your value to the community rather than that one-off gala ticket or that one-off event ticket? Talk to us about that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a system. Here's what's really interesting about community engagement. I have worked in community engagement my whole adult life. I have a master's degree in social movements. I've run for public office. I teach a class, community and civic engagement at Penn State Beaver. Here's what's really interesting about it. The nonprofit sector, the community builders, we've been doing it forever, right? When we look at civil rights movements, and how we create big change. What's really interesting, what's happening right now is the private sector is embracing this notion of community building as a marketing strategy, right? Because the younger generation, what we're finding is they want to do more than hand over their money, either to a product or to a cause. They want to be part of something bigger. And so our job as community leaders and fundraisers is to make sure there's a path of what we call, Ro, I like your term, micro commitments. You get them practiced in saying yes to you and moving them through the relationship with you. So something like 80% of consumers, when given the choice, are going to choose a company that has a community brand to it, something they feel they belong to, not just a quality product. So that's interesting. And I think nonprofits are well positioned to be ahead of the game on this. But it's an art and a science, Ro. And I think, I get, how do I engage my board? How do I engage young people? How do I engage marginalized communities? I will tell you, good engagement is good engagement. And your message is your power to attract the people who really care. I think the biggest mistake fundraisers make is they're trying to convince people to care. And the art of it is being who you are, having the strong message and getting it in the right places so you can attract young people and other people who already care and have them choose you as the cause to be part of. So it's an engagement game all around, and it is art and science.
And I think, though, when people are making choices about where to spend their money, if somebody doesn't, can't give to every single organization that reaches out to them, And maybe they don't really care that much about your organization. Maybe they don't even really care that much about theater. Once you've told me in the past that part of our strategy as organizations could be to just make sure they understand the impact your organization has on the community. So even if they don't say want to attend every single event you have, they can see that just by having your existence in their community, you provide jobs, you provide, you bring artistic content to the community. They can understand the value, right? So like if, I guess talk to us about if somebody doesn't if you can't convince someone to care about you, you can convince them to care about what you do, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And as often as some level of social activists, we want people to care as much as we do. But our jobs as fundraisers isn't really to convince people to care. I learned this when I was a community organizer out of college, knocking doors to get people involved in a cause that I cared about. And you learned real quick, you got to move through 100 doors a night. You're not trying to sit there and talk to people. You're trying to, in 30 seconds, say, hey, this is what we're about. Are you interested in learning more? And if not, you're moving on. So yeah, you have to understand that that's the exhausting game. That's the burnout path, is convincing people to care. But when we're at the early stages of fundraising, or what I like to call the hustler phase, we think it's the busy work, the more activities, adding another fundraiser, doing another email campaign. And what you're doing often is burning yourself out and also burning your audience out. So instead, we want to get a really good plan together for engagement, and then execute that plan with high quality. So we have to get really clear. I like to say we ask ourselves 3 questions, right? We ask ourselves, who are we? What are we about? And the second question is, who cares and why? And then the third question becomes, how do we reach them? And the order of this really matters a whole lot. So we're going to talk about the who are we here in a minute. But I was working with a client here in my home community. I live in Western Pennsylvania, in a rural community. And the Genesis Collective is one of my clients, and they're an arts organization that is promoting arts and what we call creative advocacy. So bringing the county together, lifting up voices, and helping artists get their work out in the economy and in the community. So we were talking about, and we were having this conversation about, well, who cares about your success, right? Who really cares if the Genesis Collective is successful in raising the arts voice up for Beaver County, who has all kinds of financial and economic serious concerns? And, she kept going to people who care about art. And I get it. Art is amazing. I'm married to an artist. I mean, art is the path to changing the world, to connect humans with themselves and each other. It's powerful. But when we went through her fundraising plan, it became clear that government money was a missing link. She had no funds coming in from elected officials or government entities. These people are your dream donors. They are responsible for helping you make up some of your budget. Why? Because you're helping them get their job done. They're not donating because they have big hearts and care about you personally or even your mission. And if they do, that's fantastic. But they have an obligation to their constituents that we're going to increase the tax base. We're going to have nice things in our community. We're going to have safety. We're going to have community health. All the things that you as organizations on your own and together collectively create for us as a country, right? So we want to hold them accountable, and we want to be really clear in our power that we're here to help you, but we're going to need your help. And this is what it's going to look like. So understanding why people care is really important. I like to say they care for 4 reasons, Ro. You and I talked about this before. They either care about your big vision, that change you want to make, making your community safer and more representative. They care about your mission, the performances you're delivering, the entertainment and the engagement you're providing. They might care about your leadership, that you as an entity in their community, you as an individual leader, really get stuff done and make exciting things happen for the neighborhood and for the city. So they're investing in you. And then finally, they might invest for what we call for your community. Now, they might want access to your community because that's their people. They love going to shows and exhibits and plays on Friday night to see their people, right? But they might also be wanting to advertise to your audience. They might also want to look good in front of your audience, like an elected official might. And I like to say our job as fundraisers isn't really to judge or care, but make sure that if they are a fit to be part of the solution, we have a path for them to do that. So getting honest about why people care and seeing if that's a good fit for you is a really important step to making fundraising and engagement easy.
So I get it. So I think one of the messages you're trying to say is really sort of diversify your fundraising efforts and make sure that you're tapping into all the potential resources that could be available to you, which I think is a constant struggle for organizations. I was recently named the chairwoman of the board of an art center in the town that I live in New York. And it's amazing to me how much time our executive director spends grant writing, and it's different every year. It's not like it's one and done and then you're good to go. Every year she's got to apply for different grants, different groups. So I get how hard it is. But going back to something you were saying about community and bringing in donors, something else I've heard a lot, which I love, is, and I think this is especially true when you have newcomers moving to your community, is sometimes people just want to be in a place where they can meet other like-minded individuals. And one person I spoke with at another conference was telling me that she met some of her best friends just by becoming a member of an organization. In her membership, her donation level gave her early access to shows. It gave her, behind the scenes, and she met some other friends that way. And that was something that was to this day really meaningful to her, and it compelled her to continue year after year being associated with this organization because she didn't want to lose that contact point. So very much about, like you said, rallying behind the leadership and supporting someone who you might think is interesting in the leadership positions, because those are people who have an influence over the town and what the town has to offer, but also by rubbing shoulders with other like-minded individuals. So I think that's a good point.
No doubt about it. I'd like to say that they come for the cause, but they stay for the connection. I mean, the fact is, even as a nonprofit, we're just a tax code, not a religion. We're a business like any other, right? It's just a different tax code on the books. You need to think about it as, why are they choosing you over somebody else doing similar work? And it gets to be doing some competitor analysis, but more importantly, Ro, the power of your message. And when you can clarify the who we are, including what makes you different, what makes you better, what makes your formula a sound investment for donors who are giving $5 or $500,000, why are you a sound investment to help them reach their goals? But you have to understand what their goals are in order to have that conversation. So I like what you said, if I can just go back to it. The first step is you want to think about who are the core buckets of funders that make the most sense for you today. Because going after everything all at once, everywhere, well, we saw that movie. No, I don't know what happened the first 30 minutes, but fabulous movie. In the end, is we're going to wear ourselves out. So we need to rank and prioritize individual donors, government funders, foundations, corporate, and we have to be methodical and meticulous of what's happening in the next 12 months and 24 months in these buckets. Then we need to come over here to our messaging and make sure our messaging is also cascading in a way that reaches those ideal people through our regular communications, right? So an example is, I've worked with the Scene Place, a theater I think you work with, Ro, and a very cool theater in Manhattan, a social justice theater, and she saw a 52% increase in her year-end giving when we worked together last year, the year before. Aaron Cronican, fantastic leader who has sadly passed, but remarkable organization, simply by changing the messaging in that campaign. taking it from 2 one-off emails to a series of 7 emails with a story arc to them. Not just talking about the performances in the schedule coming up, right? But talking about what it means to be a social justice theater, going a little deeper with that disruptive messaging, set her message apart than previous campaigns she had done for a 52% increase with the same database, the same audience. The only thing that changed was the message. So understanding when we clarify who we really are, even what sets us apart, and we message that scientifically, methodically, in between fundraisers, when we go to launch our campaign, our audience is ready to take that action. They've been hearing from us, they've been learning about what we're doing, but why it's important, and they're ready to take an action. So we want to marry the fundraising plan with our messaging brand identity, right? Our cascading messaging to help people find us. So we're not out there scurrying, picking up donor one at a time, but we're calling them in. And I think, honestly, that's what young people are going to respond to, an invitation as opposed to kind of the same old gimmicks, right?
Right.
The same old fundraisers we've all done for a long time.
And they might not even really get it. If you're just, one time, I remember you said to me, don't be so transactional. Really sell the vision of your organization, not just the ticket, not just the ticket to the gala, not just the ticket to a show. All of that, of course, you have to do, but sell the vision of the organization. And something that you said to me that really struck me was the vision of the org overall. So as we just said, the impact it has on the community itself of the members, but also at large in whatever neighborhood you're in or so on. But worse off, like what would happen if this organization disappeared? What would happen? And so many arts organizations, so many nonprofits since the pandemic have been completely destroyed because everything dried up. We've seen it, it's heartbreaking. And you don't want to think about that, but I think it is maybe an important thing to bring up with your community, which is let's not take this for granted. This organization needs you, and they could go away, and that would be tragic. So I kind of feel like you were starting to go there with your story about the Manhattan Theater and how there was a story arc.
Yeah, the story arc, and also for the Genesis Collective that was able to go to a state rep and not beg for money, not ask him to sponsor an event that she could have easily done. What you end up getting in those cases is what I call go away money. You might get a check, but it's not nearly as big as it should be, and it's not nearly as big as what they're responsible for. So instead, we went into that meeting with the state rep armed with our facts, right? Armed with, we're an $800 billion industry. We have the potential in this industry to generate this kind of revenue. And this messaging isn't just for behind closed doors with corporations or elected officials, but this could be built into your arc, your messaging arc. The average person benefits from understanding not just what you're doing, but why it's important. I often look to social movements as examples, amazing examples, even before the digital era, of how do you get people all together moving in the same direction, right? And it's so much of it is that big vision message that we know who we are and we know what winning looks like. We know the end game. And we can go away as arts organization when arts are everywhere, when arts are the basis of our curriculum in schools, when arts are happening in the household, when arts are happening everywhere. Artists are supported. But until then, right, until that big vision of arts being the center of our economy, we need organizations and theaters and associations to go in and advocate for arts as the path to bringing us together, building our economy, and providing us beautiful, important, relatable entertainment that connects us with ourselves and each other. You need to be selling on all of those fronts, depending on who you're talking to.
Amy, let's talk a little bit about how we communicate with people, because I think that has changed too. The same old email, direct mail is fine, but are you finding that there's different ways, whether it's social media or using apps or other technologies? Like, are there are there other ways to reach people, especially as you try to expand your audience and go younger? You know, young people don't necessarily use Facebook and the same things that we older people use. What are you finding has been interesting there? And actually, I would open that question up to anyone in the audience that even wants to put their own comments in the chat. Have you found the organizations you consult with have been testing out interesting things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think here's what's really important is you need to think about that journey of the person who comes into your world, right? You've got to really put your hat on. What is it like for them? So they buy their first ticket to a performance. How do they hear about you over the next 3 months? So I think what's really important is, and again, we're talking to artists and activists. I was trained pounding the pavement, but it has to be a digital first approach. Right? Even knocking doors, young people don't answer their doors, so we can't canvas them. They don't answer their doors, and I don't blame them. I think they're brilliant for that. But then we've got to try some new things. And so we really have to build out our digital game. And so you want to think about your digital footprint. Where are the people who care about your cause hanging out online? How does it connect with your website to the platforms you're using? And then how does your message then get delivered in a way that's provocative enough that really grabs their attention? And we want to get past just letting them know about the next performance. Not that that's not important, but our vision is much bigger than a series of a season series, right? It's much bigger than that. And so we have to remember that in fundraising, we have to beef up that end of the story. We have to listen, here's what I learned about, you want people to hang out with you at the end of the day. This is very simple. If anybody likes having house parties and having a house full of people, and I will say, Ro is a great example of this. So we end up on her doorstep. This was just 2 weeks ago, right, Ro? I don't think it was that long after getting stranded at JFK.
Yeah.
We call Ro and say, we're coming over with 7 people. The door's open. The food is out on the table. The drinks
I'm Italian. Everyone's always welcome at my house. So
everybody's always welcome to Rose.
At a moment's notice, it was, I don't know if anyone has been following the debacles that have been going on in the New York airports, but this seems to be happening a lot, delays and things like that. But yeah, your point is right. And I think that the more, we do have to use technology because it's there for us. But, at the end of the day, what our organizations do is something so much greater because it is that in person. It is that thing that, AI can't generate. We are giving live performances and live experiences as well as education and other things like that. But I think it's like kind of one of those necessary evils is the way I see it. You have to use the technology to your advantage because that's the reality. I kind of
want to challenge you on that a little bit, Ro, because, as somebody who's not so technology savvy as myself, my husband does drum circles. So he's a conga player and is a community building program. He facilitates drum circles and it's very in person. So I start working with a client in 2014, stackup.org. They're doing amazing work to end veteran suicide in this country. And it's all done through a love of video gaming. Mm-hmm. And this mission blew my mind in 2014 when I'm thinking you should have a drum circle, right? As a 50-year or a 45-year-old woman. And he's thinking, yeah, that's fun, except for if you're a post 9/11 veteran, it's not that fun.
Right. They don't want to hear the drums.
So I got to be honest, he changed my mind. And what I think we need to do is take those values and learn how to deliver them online.
Right.
And so we're never going to replace in person. Nobody wants to, but we've got to cut down on the resistance that a digital first approach isn't essential in this day and age. And nobody should be afraid of AI. Nobody can replace your authentic voice in what we do. But we got to get that voice and that provocative message out there. So that's what I mean by a digital first approach. And here's what I want to say about that, Ro. It's important to know your values in doing it, because otherwise it can feel AI, it can feel rote. But when you root down into your values, and this I learned from my mom, not in my graduate degree, not in my 25 years of nonprofit experience. And Ro was at my house a lot growing up, but my mom taught me the values of community building. I call her a kitchen table kind of community builder. And she taught me 3 really important things about making our home a safe and happy place that people liked to be. And the first thing she taught me is Have real conversations with them about real things. Help them feel seen and heard. That's what you do as arts organizations. You help artists and the people in their communities feel seen and heard. That's a value. We have to translate it online. She taught me that the other thing that she taught me is you have to make it fun and engaging. It can't just be, we have a fundraiser, here's a fact, here's a performance, in addition to the performance being fun engagement, our energy online has to be fun and engaging. And she taught me that by, as a 15-year-old, having a party at my house at Christmas time, and I thought it was the most embarrassing thing ever. And sure enough, friends came over. She got her house decorated, right? She got what she needed out of the deal. And we ended up having a great time that made, memories for years for my friends. But I was so embarrassed at first, but she made it fun and engaging. And then thirdly, she made it accountable, that we're accountable and we're transparent. We're going to talk about what we do well and what we're strong at. We're going to talk about our struggles and our challenges. Your community deserves to hear it all. And when you're feeling confident with that message, you have nothing to lose but to share it, because that's how people can help you. She would always say that when we left the house. Ro, do you remember this? She'd always say, whether we were alone or with friends, she'd say, the last thing we heard every single time was behave. Those are her last words to us.
Yes, I do remember that.
It wasn't I love you.
No.
Behave. But it taught me accountability, and that I have to be, organizations need to be accountable, right?
Right.
That the right thing to do.
It's a great responsibility to be part of.
It's a responsibility. And as organizations, we need to convey that we are responsible, we're accountable, we're willing to look at the hard stuff, and you have to share that with your audience. So your messaging actually gets pretty in depth. I teach 5 types of messages that you need to deliver over and over again to build trust and your authority and that emotional connection.
So we have Grace Cho in the chat from New Orchestra of Washington put a note here that says connecting grassroots marketing and fundraising through consistent organizational storytelling, which I think is very true and speaks to what you're saying, Amy. But it also reminded me of this organization that I'm the chairperson of. We're launching a capital campaign, and I looked at the collateral and I thought back to something that Amy and I had talked about. You can't assume that everybody knows who you are. And you can't assume that everybody is just going to want to, open their checkbook and give you money or buy into what you're about. If you don't tell them not just who you are, but all of those key points we just mentioned, who's on the leadership committee, what your organization has in terms of what you have to offer members, whether it's the programming or so on, and what you do for the community. So do you have educational programs? Do you have some sort of connection to schools, like whatever it is? You just can't assume everybody knows these things. And so I do think that,
so true.
Yeah, repeating that over and over is pretty important, right?
When I ran for office, so one of the things I've done that I'm most proud of and taught me the most about community engagement, probably the act of engaging, was running for office. And during that campaign in 2018, I ran for Pennsylvania State House. I'm actually currently an elected school board member, but I ran for a competitive, it wasn't that competitive, but I ran because I wanted to see change in my community in 2018 for PA State House. And it was a long shot. I had consultants explaining what the job was, and the job was to build community, and likely you weren't going to win. And I had to raise something like $100,000. I built a list of 1,500 people who were interested, and we knocked 8,000 doors. And so we won the game on community building, even though I lost that race, because ever since then, we've had people running in for that seat. We have an organized party in our community. And in 8,000 doors, man, I got so tired of my 30-second pitch, right? I'm a mom, I'm a school board member, and I'm a businesswoman. I'm tired of the fighting in Harrisburg, and I'm running because I want to see change. And I wanted to change it. I got tired of it. I had new things I wanted to talk about, but the door 7,999 hadn't heard it yet. Mm-hmm. And probably door 2 forgot it. So it's so important to be disciplined with your message. This is the science part of it. It's actually very methodical. When you own it and you're authentic about it, you're bringing in the artistic flow to it, but it has to be a common. Community organizing is absolutely art and science. And it's powerful when it works. And I'll tell you, nothing ever in this world nothing we've achieved in big measure has come from anything shy of community coming together to demand change or to demand a new future. You guys are disruptors, not entertainers. And I want you to really kind of own that fearlessness to that and walk into those funding meetings and talk to those funders. Your $10,000 gift last year was amazing. It helped us out a lot. Let me talk to you about our strategic plan and see how a $20,000 gift is going to make the difference. When Genesis Collective went in to talk to the state rep, not the one that beat me, another one, it was this nice. They're always so nice, right? And they just kind of scurry you out of the office and then you leave like, I didn't really get any answers to anything. They're pros at that. They're elected officials. Instead, we went in explaining what we were doing for the community. We put numbers to it. We asked his help in putting numbers to it to get his buy-in, those micro commitments. And then we said, we certainly can see why you need our organization to succeed. How can we partner together to do that? And we started talking about multi-six-figure gifts instead of what originally we were thinking was going to be a 5-figure gift. So we're working on that gift, but the conversation and the reputation of the organization is shifting quickly in the community.
That's a great success story. So a couple other questions that I'll throw out, but again, anybody who wants to drop in the chat, please do. I think one of the things that's striking to me, and I see this in New York with theater a lot, is, and not everybody on the call is necessarily a theater, but I think organizations are really paying attention to changing up the programming. So bringing in different voices, bringing in different people who can tell their stories, which is really exciting for me as a passionate theater goer, because I love that I'm listening to, I'm joining and participating in content that I haven't seen before. It's exciting, it's groundbreaking, it's challenging. How do you kind of reconcile getting out, that's hard work in and of itself, making that sort of change, even going out and trying to find the content is challenging. But a lot of our clients have done that work and they've changed up who they are. They've, kept up with the demands of really the world, not just their own communities. So how do you reconcile an organization that has done all this good stuff and they want to get that message out? They want to make sure that they're aligning who they are and the content they're creating with new audiences, because those audiences may not be typical theater people, for instance. They may be people who never valued theater or just don't know it or never had the money for it. And, to get them to come in, and people aren't even really, it's not as easy to get people to go out and do anything anymore, given the pandemic. Going to movie theaters, going to traditional theater. It's hard, even going out to dinner. It's sometimes hard to get people to come out. So how do you create events and environment where you can reach into somebody's home and say, hey, this is for you. This is, just come in and give it a try. I
love that question.
Yeah.
It's such an exciting time for the industry. And often that's code for scary time. So, because and we're not alone, right? This reinvention is happening almost universally. And it is an opportunity. I think this is where your digital first approach with a powerful message is going to be critical to draw on these potentially new audience of people who didn't think to look to theaters, didn't think that was their tribe, but their understanding of the direction we're heading in now is so important. So I would think about this as even a story arc in an email sequence, right? And maybe think of it as your year-end appeal, for example, where you're really doing a strong educational campaign on why this theater matters to the community, why this arts center matters to the community. And yep, we're going to highlight some artists, but we're also going to do one email on statistics around the economy. We're going to do one email around marginalized communities and lifting up the voice of members of community that normally aren't heard or have a seat at the table. And the campaign might be called something like arts to save the world, arts to build our community. And then I would think through a sequence of messaging and emails that you could then put into small sound bites, and I'm not a marketing expert, guys. I am a community builder and I am a strategic planner and a fundraising strategist. But I know that the designing of the messaging of that campaign and then using that message over and over again versus changing it up. Some people like to talk to me about fundraising and they think, what's a good fundraiser? And here's my answer. It doesn't matter. It honestly rarely matters whether you're selling Girl Scout cookies, whether you're doing the gala, whether you're doing a 5K or you're sponsoring getting 10% of the proceeds at the local restaurant. It really doesn't matter. It's your approach to it that matters. And are you going to do transactional fundraiser where you're saying we just need $10 or we just need you to buy this ticket? Or are you going to say your ticket is the path to help us change our community and give marginalized voices a shot here?
Right.
And I think that's a really important.
The value of it. Yeah, we had during the pandemic, we also have a business in the UK called What's on Stage, which is one of our consumer brands. And we ran a campaign when theaters were shuttered and a lot of people were doing streaming content, that sort of thing. We ran a campaign saying it was called Curtains. And it was really cute. The design was these curtains, and the whole thing was, it would be, theater will be curtains without you. So in other words, like your contribution, your interaction with us is saving actually an entire industry. And so without you, it's curtains. And I always thought that was catchy and cute.
That is great.
Oh, we have a comment here from Cheryl. I just want to read it out loud, saying, when I was the education director for a nonprofit arts org, I created an outreach program that partnered with the school district, the city and their senior centers, the women's shelter, and the others. The impact we made and the people we engaged with was phenomenal. These were stories we told. Rather than just be considered just an art gallery, we became known as the organization who takes arts to underserved areas.
That's it.
We let people know we were accessible. We began to see bigger donations and larger corporations sponsoring our programming. That's awesome, Cheryl. And I really think that's kind of going back to what we were saying about it's not just about you. Like there are some people, your core people are going to get that and they're going to love you and who you are. They're going to want to hang out there and go to all your events. But that base is small. So in order to try to appeal to more people and, by the way, allow you to do the work that you want to do, you do have to talk about your impact on the community at large. And then the third level being, so it's what do you do specifically? What do you do for your community? And what do the arts do? So this never happens. I had the most exciting email come in the other day. Again, I'm putting on my hat as chairwoman of the board of the Pelham Arts Center, which is an art center, gallery and classes and stuff like that in my community. I got an email the other day from a guy, I swear to God. He said, I'm new to the neighborhood. I'm in charge of my aunt's estate, and she wants me to find arts organizations that she can make donations to. So he had no affiliation with us or even the community. He was new, but he, thank God, had his aunt's money, and he gave us this generous donation. And thank God we did the outreach we had done. So he found us. I know that never happens. But the point is he didn't have to. You know what,
Ro? I love that. It came out of nowhere. Like when I hear clients start saying that language, I'm like, It never comes out of nowhere.
No, it didn't. It's because of everything we had been doing. That's right. Yep. So I think that's a good point. I also think that, like you just said, it is about going beyond. And I think we just have to, we can't assume the same things work. So if we're trying to make theater or arts in general more accessible to people, we have to think about the way people want to enjoy their time. And it may not be coming in and sitting for 3 hours in the dark and spending, $100. That could sound awful to some people who aren't used to sitting still or doing things. So I think that the fact that a lot of our clients are listening, so going back to something you said about being transparent and listening to what people are telling them, we, the other consumer brand that AudienceView owns is Theater Mania. We do a lot of surveys to hear what people are saying. And I think that's really telling, because if you don't listen, you could easily get blindsided and not really realize that something you're doing is just not anything anyone cares about anymore. So
and you have to assess. I think that's a really good point. Listen, and then you have to kind of look honestly and assess if it's working or not, having those hard conversations. Remember, a donor isn't funding the performance series for that season. They're just not. They're funding ultimately your strategic plan, right?
Yeah.
And your strategic plan is rooted in your vision, which is arts is the path to do what? To create what? And we got to fill that out. We got to make sure that your core messaging is strong and that the plan is there. And that can be hard for fundraisers when maybe they're not in charge of a strategic plan, but they're in charge of selling it. And so there are challenges with that.
Who do you think, this is a question for you, but also for our audience, and I saw there's a note that there's only 15 minutes. We're just going to keep talking unless I see comments in here. So I'm not going to pause, because if anyone wants to have a chance to speak up and come off mute, then you can raise your hand. There's the raise hand icon, or you can just type questions in the chat. One of the questions I had, well, there's two things I want to point out. One thing I thought was pretty cool is we've recently launched an app with our enterprise software product, which has allowed us to identify people coming into venues who we might not have otherwise known. So for instance, if I buy 4 tickets to a concert and I give them, like I did the other day, and I just print them out, give them to people, I don't know, the organization only knows me, doesn't know who they are. So the cool thing about the app is it's I could send the ticket to someone and that person also registers. So now the organization has a relationship with people who weren't necessarily the person who made the purchase. So I think that what struck me is when you were talking about the messaging path, or the arc, the story arc, it clearly has to be different depending on who you're talking to. If it's somebody
and you've got to figure out who you want to be talking to. Like that, that's part of the strategic work, right? Is like that has to be decided, and then you can put the plan in place. But if you're reaching out to everyone in every category, you're going to create so much busy work and clutter. It will be less effective. But if we're trying to reach Asian Americans, we're trying to reach marginalized communities, we're trying to reach African American communities, you need to think about that, because your messaging and where you put your marketing dollars, all of that ties into that strategy. They have to know that you're their community, and if you don't know who you want that to be,
and I think this is where technology can help too, because to create it, it's like you just said, it's a lot for an organization to handle all the different types of messaging. But if you've got some sort of CMS or some sort of customer journey tool that can help with that, but you want to be authentic too. You don't want to just
be authentic. To be honest, I don't do a lot of segmenting, Ro. I really don't. I know who my ideal client is. So for me, I was
thinking more just new versus just like not segmenting communities or demographics, but more just like, here's somebody who's new to us. They've come in for the first time. They didn't even pay, but is this an opportunity for us to tell them who we are? That kind of thing.
And here's a tip. I don't know if you do this or if you've shared this with the group before, but don't underestimate, a small 3 email sequence that every time somebody new comes into your database, they get 3 emails over the course of 6 or 7 days that educate them on who you are, what you're about, and how they can get involved. Or so you can use digital automation to help make that nurturing a little easier.
So another question I have for you or anyone is, when you think about the critical roles that you need to have in order to be a successful arts organization, and I'm talking on the business side, I'm not talking about on the talent side. And I think about this a lot, and it doesn't necessarily mean like who you're hiring, but it could be skills somebody already there needs, somebody who's there needs to have. So, we talk about having really powerful messaging. So you need somebody who can write content, who can write it with a marketing eye, not just writing, it's a very different skill than writing a grant proposal. I would imagine you need somebody with good design skills. You need somebody who understands marketing. But in thinking about today's world of community building and fundraising, and again, I'm not trying to say, oh, go hire this person. I'm saying, like, let's say you're an executive director, or you are somebody who wears 10 different hats at your org. Like we most nonprofits do, or we all do. Is there a critical skill that somebody should, if they haven't already, adopt today? Like, should they learn more about whatever? Is it, go ahead.
Yeah, and I can certainly tell you that, we can talk about the values, we can talk about some of the tactics, but to answer your question around skill, it is copywriting. It is learning how to write in this new age and era that you have. And so I actually work with clients in designing their invitation to donate. And we create kind of a PowerPoint of core messaging so that when you go into a meeting or you go write an appeal, you kind of know what your greatest hits are. I like to call them our greatest hits. And the idea is your greatest hits don't change. You repurpose them. You might say, we're an 800 million, we contribute $800 million a year, or locally we contribute $1.5 million into the local economy. That headline you might be able to use over and over again, but the example you use with every email will change. So our schools are doing better. Our small Main Street businesses are doing better. Our government officials are reporting that, healthcare is going differently, or safety. So, I was already in an online business before the pandemic hit, and I invested quite a bit of money working with influencers to understand.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
I mean, I've invested a lot of money to learn this, and now I can teach it, and I can use it successfully to drive my own business, which is international.
Right. So, Amy, I think we're almost out of time. I'm going to recap 3 slides that you and I put together when I gave this presentation at NAMT, another conference. Fire up your messaging. So 4 things to think about. Focus on the reason you exist, the effects your organization has on the community, the effects the arts have at large on the community, and think about if we went away, what would happen. So that was one really important slide you and I put together. And then when you're talking about selling things like gala tickets or particular events, you said to me, don't sell the particulars, don't be so transactional, sell the vision, which then should help translate to selling those tickets, because of course we need those. And if you do hook them, connect the community, help people get to know each other, because like I went to a gala last year for one of our clients. I didn't know anybody except my clients. And I thought it was so much fun sitting at this table and meeting people, but having those opportunities, those icebreakers to connect people is really important. And then again, like we said, they don't have to care about theater or this theater, but they have to buy into the concept that arts overall are important. And that's why you have to keep reinforcing the impact your organization has on the community, and then maybe even give some of those stats like you said about the arts at large. So 4 reasons people give. And we heard this also from our survey we did of our Theater Mania community. They care about your vision. They care about these are reasons they might give. They might care about your vision and what you're trying to do and the value you bring. They might care about your mission, which is your theater or the neighborhood, the impact. They might care about the leadership. They might be really excited to hear somebody took a new position there. Maybe it's an artistic director that's really interesting. So talk those people up, press releases, like do some social media just on those personas. Like that's really something to be very proud of. And those people have to leverage their communities as well. And then audience and community. Donor wants to meet other like-minded individuals. It's a great way to meet people. And I'll also just add one other thing. Leverage your board, because your board should not be just showing up once a month for a meeting. They really need to go and help and do the advocacy work for you. So those are my takeaways from some of our recent discussions. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I mean, I think that's a great framework. We could certainly keep going. There's no doubt about it. I mean, here's the truth. The success of these organizations on this call means so much to this country. This is not nice to have.
And Canada, I know there's some Canadians.
In Canada, to our North
everyone
America,
who's on.
To the world. And I'm not exaggerating.
No, it's true.
And if you don't own that power, if you don't see the strength in that, if you don't believe that, it is going to be impossible to convince others to invest at that level. So let's get your messaging really honed in. Let's really, do the work to get your making the case slide deck. I like to call the making the case messaging organized so your confidence keeps going up. I put in here quiz that I've created. What type of fundraiser are you? And it's going to talk you through and email you some tangible worksheets and things you can use. How do you move from the hustler phase to that serial entrepreneurial phase, who's always growing and saying yes to things, to that fearless phase that knows your worth and is not afraid to call people in to invest in it and really welcome them. I'll just say one more thing. Whether you're online or in person, you don't invite people into your home and at the front door say, who are you and what do you do, right? You take their coat, you bring them in, you get them a drink,
you welcome them.
Introduce to them. You, as you said, Ray, you introduce them to somebody else that they might be interested in. You have them showcase something, a recipe they brought or a talent they can share. We have to learn how to do this digitally and online.
As well as in person. Yeah, because they really do contribute a lot. So listen, we're out of time. This was great, Amy. And thank you for everyone who attended. We will make this available. You're also welcome to reach out to Amy or to me or anyone at AudienceView if you want to talk about these things. We love this. We love you. And I truly think that, arts organizations are what's going to save us in this crazy, crazy world we live in right now. So appreciate everything everyone on this call does.
Thank you to everyone on the call.
Have a good one.